introductory video to Let's Learn the Raspberry Pi and Linux. I guess by starting, a good way to start is to show you Raspberry Pi. This is it. It's a credit card sized full computer. It retails for between $25 and $35. This is the Raspberry Pi B. There's also an A model. The main difference between A and B is A has 250 megabytes of RAM, the B has 512 megabytes of RAM, and the B has an Ethernet port right there. From what I understand, A does not. There's also a Wi-Fi adapter, but that's sold separately. So then I guess the next step would be, why was the Raspberry Pi built? Right? From what I understand, it was built as an education device, an education computer. A computer, you know, very basic computer, but fairly powerful. I'll get back to that later. Nowadays we live in an environment where the base system you use is a windowing environment, which hides a lot of the complexity of the software running on the system. This will run in a Windows environment, but I think it more efficiently will run in a terminal environment, which hopefully we'll learn more about as time goes on. What else? You get to see everything on the board. We live in an environment nowadays where you buy a device, you plug it in, and you're done. You don't even I don't think anybody ever even opens up the computers anymore to modify. But this just screams, modify me. Because this is how it comes. Well, it comes in a bag, anti-static bag. But that's what it comes like. So, well, I know a fair amount about computers and such, but this is hopefully going to teach me even more. So I guess the best thing to do next is take you a walk through around the board.
Okay, let's go around the board. This is the CPU, the Central Processing Unit. This is basically the brains of the Raspberry Pi. It is a 700 megahertz processor. It has a GPU built in. The GPU is the Graphical Processing Unit. This is more efficient in displaying more difficult video processes, such as HD display, video games which require a lot of high number of frames, etc. The Raspberry Pi A model has 256 megabytes of RAM. The Raspberry Pi B model comes with 512 megabytes of RAM. Now, continuing on to the power connector. The Raspberry Pi is powered by a micro USB cable. The Raspberry Pi only requires 5 volts of power to power up, which it draws through the USB power cord. That's pretty remarkable. Continuing around the board, this is the HDMI out, so you can plug it into any modern TV. Continuing around the board to the opposite side, this is the Ethernet jack. From what I understand, the Raspberry Pi A does not have this. The Raspberry Pi B, which this is, has the Ethernet jack. You can also buy a Wi-Fi adapter for either model. It does not come standard with the Raspberry Pi. Next to the Ethernet port is the USB ports. from, again, what I understand, the Raspberry Pi A only has one USB port. The Raspberry Pi B has two. As of release of this video, there is now Raspberry Pi B Plus, which has, I think, 4 ports. You might want to seriously consider getting the Raspberry Pi B Plus, because the USB ports are going to be what you're going to be using to plug in your keyboard, your mouse, any of your peripherals. So once you plug in your keyboard and your mouse, you're full. Or if you want to decide to plug in a game controller, those kind of things. You can add a hub, so it's not totally hopeless, and you might be able to get a system that allows you to plug in a mouse and keyboard into one port. Continuing around the board, this is the 3.5 millimeter audio jack. This will give you access to your sound. This is for your sound output. Continuing around the board, this is the Rca Video Out. It allows you to plug the Raspberry Pi into older TVs and some screens that do not allow for HDMI input. Finally, this is the SD card slot. This is essentially the hard drive of your computer. This is where you're going to store your files. Before you can actually use the Raspberry Pi, you will need an SD card. You will need an SD card to put your operating system to tell the, basically, this is what's needed to tell the computer how to operate. This is also where you'll put your software. And that's your quick run around the board.
Well, I'm probably missing, for example, what these are. I'm guessing these are for upgrading. I actually don't know. And it's going to be fun. So, I hope you come along, and I don't know what the first project's going to be, but I'll try to put up another video next week. I think the next video would probably be for explaining Linux. Oh, that's another neat feature, but the SD slot here allows you to put your this is where your storage is, right? So the storage, you also have to put your operating system on here. This is if you're in the Windows environment, you would have Windows on here and you put it in here. But this being a Linux computer, put Linux on here, put it in. You can buy these cheap, and what's really neat is you can say you want to make it this your game system. So you put your games on here, plug it in. Put your operating system, set it all up, optimize it for gaming, plug it in, turn it on, and you got optimized computer for gaming. Then you say you want to watch videos. You can have a separate separate SD card. Put it in. You have an optimized system for video playback. You can make it into a NAS box, a network attached storage. Network attached storage. Plug it in. You got a network attached storage. So it's like plug and play almost. To me, this is really cool. It almost reminds me of having a game system back in the day where you had different cartridges and you just plug them in. But that's not going to work that fast. Cartridge instant. But we'll find out, eh? So I'm glad you watched this video. I hope you come along for the journey that I'm going to go and embark on. And this was a Raspberry Pi. See you next video. Be good.